Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Jay Kishi, and it's Producer Tip Tuesday, where we discuss overlooked topics on how to be a better producer. Before we get into the video, I invite you guys to please like and subscribe, as it really helps out the channel. And if you're interested, I do these discussions at full length on my Twitch channel, linked in the description, every Tuesday. But if you can't make those, don't worry, I'll be uploading these edited down versions every week here on my YouTube channel. Well, without further ado, hope you guys enjoy. Today's topic is: should producers learn an instrument, and how/why? All right, so let's look at the why. Why it's a good idea to learn. First things first, you have a better grasp of rhythm if you can categorize it the way that someone who plays an instrument does, the way a musician would think of them. Simply just counting, but also like being able to pick out certain named types of swing and accents. So like when I listen to Pharrell beats, I really pick up on how he accentuates the upbeat, the and, but also the 16th note accents that he throws in with the percussion is always really particular. So that's something I probably wouldn't notice if I was just living in a DAW all day, every day, never trying to learn music theory or how to read music in rhythms. The other thing is that you also learn how to categorize notes and intervals as tensions, as opposed to in scale versus out of scale, which is how tools like, scale in Ableton or the Ableton Push, or even things like Cthulhu, MIDI packs might categorize them. Along with that, you can think of chord progressions that go beyond the world of diatonicism. So you can get outside of the scope of just staying in major scale chords. You also may not have to rely on samples so much. If you have samples, and you can play an instrument, you have now three ways to make beats. You have a sample based, only playing live instruments or virtual instruments, and then mixing them is the third way. The other thing is that you also learn how to communicate with musicians better. And that can be really important if you ever want someone to be like, hey, come play trumpet on my beat. A good musician should be able to just listen to it and be like, I think I have an idea of what you want. But there's also a lot of people who would be like, this is your project. You need to tell me what to do. You need to direct me. So you need to be able to direct them and ask the right people, and also judge who is the right choice for a project. That can be really helpful and will expand a lot of the possibilities with your music, I think. Why you maybe should not learn an instrument if you haven't already: it takes a lot of time. It's not something you can just learn in a weekend. You can get pretty far in a short amount of time, but it's very easy to get sidetracked. And ultimately, the time that you're spending practicing your instrument will be time that you're not making tracks. And that's good to remember, because it will, if you ultimately decide to pursue an instrument, you'll have to balance your time in that way. The other thing that goes along with that is analysis paralysis, or trying to, use music theory as the way to make music, as opposed to playing by ear and by feel, or with samples where you can just be like, that sounds good, that sounds bad, and you're very categorical. Instead, you might be thinking like at every moment, what note am I playing? What's the next note I should play? Okay, let's take it back to the scale. All right, let's think about the tensions. Let's think about the intervals. Too many options can present an issue. The other thing that goes along with that too is you won't necessarily develop a stronger ear for melodies, and that comes with, whether you're judging somebody else's beat or music, or if you're trying to come up with your own melodies. Just by learning an instrument doesn't mean that you're going to learn how to make better melodies necessarily. And then ultimately, having more options, no matter what point in the production process you are at, will slow you down in some way. What will help to counteract that, though, is by having a strong familiarity with the tools in your toolbox. If you have a good understanding of when to do this, when to do that, and still having enough kind of curiosity and willingness to go outside the box, then you can kind of marry the two things, where you have lots of options, but you have a straight and narrow path towards your, the sound that you want. So how to go about learning an instrument? The first step, you got to pick one. So I think there's kind of two ways you can think of it. you can think of it as what will be most useful and what will be most unique. So as far as what's most useful, if you're a producer who uses a computer, by like any measure, you should be learning piano. Like that's the first thing you should do. You don't need to be amazing, but you should be quite proficient with some basics. But aside from that, what else would be useful would probably be other songwriting instruments like guitar and other instruments that will give you better perspective on how to make beats, which would be drums and bass. The key instruments that you could learn, I think, if you were looking at what's the absolute most useful things, it would be drums, bass, because those form the foundation of any, basically all genres of music. And even if you don't use your drum set and your live like electric bass on every song, it'll give you perspective on how to write better. And then keyboard, I think, is just a mandatory thing if you're a producer who uses MIDI instruments, obviously. That's going to be important. And guitar, I think, will be just another thing because it gives you access to articulation that is not available on a keyboard. So those would be the most like absolutely useful, like most utilitarian perspective would be to play one of those four instruments: bass, drums, keyboard, or guitar. If you go the more unique route and you're trying to play something that will make you stand out as a producer, that's a different discussion. And I think there's a few choices that people tend to make. I think that you could go for like kind of a quirky string instrument, like a ukulele or a violin, something like that. Violin is very difficult, so I don't know if I would recommend that if you're an adult learning it. But there's plenty of difficult instruments out there. There's plenty of people who have learned instruments as an adult and are very successful, because as an adult, you have a little bit more perspective on muscle control and general discipline that a kid might not have so much help on. And then along with that, you could look into saxophone. I think a lot of people really lean on their sax chops to accentuate their production. Some people that come to mind: FKJ, Masego, and this kid named Versus Beats. He's like 19, and he makes a lot of beats. He makes a lot of tight beats on YouTube. So I think that's a strong reason to pick an instrument like that, is that you're not going to use a saxophone on every single beat, but you can definitely get a lot of mileage out of it because it's unique. And in the same way, horns, I think any sort of wind instrument would be useful, but you do have to keep in mind that with wind instruments and bowed string instruments, there's a step up in difficulty for sure, as opposed to drums, guitar, bass, keyboard. All right, so how to go about actually learning an instrument. We can think of this as like the 80-20 principle. There's a select collection of skills, things that if you master them, they will take you very far with your instrument, and almost everything else is kind of filler, is stuff to be worked on later. I think the first thing is timing and groove. As a producer, timing is incredibly important. You can warp audio and use flex timing in like Pro Tools, Logic, Ableton. If you'd make a timing flub, but timing will just help you across the board. And producers rarely practice timing based skills. Some people do practice their finger drumming, but most producers don't really practice music the way that people who play instruments do. The other thing is intervals and harmonic organization of notes. So being able to build chords, understanding scales, understanding intervals, those will all contribute to your ear training as a producer and a musician in general. And being able to recognize everything from the perspective of a key center will be helpful. Three is technique and articulation. So this is really important when it comes to like that directing kind of, if you're hiring someone or something like that, asking someone, collaborating with a instrumentalist, you should learn how articulation works on your instrument. So on guitar, it's like hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, things like that. Technique and articulation will allow you to use your instrument to its full potential in a way that MIDI instruments won't necessarily give you access to. And then the third thing is transcription and repertoire. If I'm chasing after a particular sound, one of the easiest things you can do as a beat maker is remake someone's beat. So in a similar sense, if there's a song that I really like or a solo I really like, the best things that you can do to incorporate that into your sound is to transcribe it and learn it. So transcribing doesn't necessarily mean going and writing out actual sheet music, but it means learning it from ear. Transcribing is like the final destination that you will stay at forever, because as long as there are other musicians that inspire you, transcription is a viable way to improve yourself. The bonus kind of fifth thing is like jamming with people, learning to improv and have fun. So that's why and how you should learn an instrument as a producer. I do think everybody should learn piano if you're using a DAW. If I can trace back things that have helped me as a producer more than anything, learning to play piano was absolutely the most important decision I ever made, because I have no excuses now. Pretty much daily, I'm trying to get better at playing piano and playing trumpet. And ultimately, it's, absolutely one of the most pure forms of joy and entertainment that I have in my life. And I don't think I would appreciate the same way if I was just making beats, but I was not playing an instrument. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.